Good morning, everyone. I'm so sorry that we can't all be together in Austin this year for ETS20. I miss the networking, the ability to walk around on a stage while giving a speech. That's a real problem for me. And oh yeah, I definitely miss the Texas barbecue. But as Michelle Obama said, it is what it is. So instead, I'm sending you greetings from California, where not much has happened beyond a triple dosage of COVID-19, heat waves, and wildfires. While none of the fires you've seen in the news are burning in SMUD service area, the smoke has left us with some of the unhealthiest air on the planet. As for the heat waves, they prompted rolling outages up and down the state. Here we were fortunate also. SMUD operates an independent balancing authority outside of the California Independent System Operator. So we were able to steer clear of any rolling outages for the 1.5 million people we serve. We're starting to get some encouraging news on the COVID-19 front, maybe a vaccine mid next year, but we're still many, many months from getting back to normal. Here at SMUD, more than half of our 2,400 employee workforce is working remotely and will continue to do so until sometime next year. So wow, you're probably saying, what a downer this Arlen dude is, but actually I'm an optimist. And I'm proud of the ways in which SMUD has responded to these epic challenges. When I spoke at ETS19 in Austin, must have been 16 or 17 months ago, I think, I talked about the aggressive ways in which SMUD was fighting climate change. I'm proud that the SMUD board recently selected Paul Lau, currently our Chief Grid Strategy and Operations Officer, as my successor. It's clear validation of the leadership role we've taken in building a cleaner, more sustainable future. But it's also recognition of how much further we have to go on this low carbon journey. And I wish my friend Paul the best in his new role, one which I am sure he will find is the most rewarding and, yeah, challenging of his career. Today, the calendar reminded me that I've only 11 days left as SMUD CEO. So I got one foot out the door. I figure, what the hell? I can talk about something I really care about, and that's equity, and to issue a call to action about the role all of us must play in creating a more equitable society as we tackle climate change and transition to a low carbon future. When I refer to the role all of us must play, I mean SMUD, other utilities, technology companies, solar companies, EV manufacturers, internet providers, healthcare policy makers, and so forth and so on. We all have a moral obligation to help solve a problem which has too long been ignored. When I talk about equity, I know three things. First, talking about equity is easy and fashionable at the moment, but actually addressing our historically underserved and largely forgotten neighborhoods is damned hard work. Second, the pandemic and economic disruption has brought these historic inequities into sharp focus. We know low-income workers have been disproportionately impacted, with the Federal Reserve reporting that almost 40% of workers earning less than $40,000 a year lost work, compared to only 13% of workers earning more than $100,000. Disadvantaged communities have been hit first, hit hardest, and will be the last to recover. And third, the technology revolution, and clean tech in particular, is leaving disadvantaged neighborhoods behind. And absent action, we run the risk of exacerbating the equity divide even more. So there's our problem statement, folks. Let me tell you how it's manifested itself in California in the Sacramento region and what we at SMUD are doing to help. So Sacramento is one of the most diverse cities in America, with nearly 30 languages spoken and a deep appreciation for the richness of our multicultural environment. And yet equity continues to be a pressing problem. An early 2018 Brookings Institute report on Sacramento was a wake-up call for our region, for SMUD, and for me personally. From 2006 to 2016, Sacramento ranked in the bottom third of the country's 100 largest metropolitan areas in composite rankings of growth, prosperity, and inclusion. 34% of our residents were unable to afford basic household experiences. The report recommended urgent action to address the racial and ethnic disparities in education and job skills across the Sacramento region. The report concluded that these disparities were holding the entire region back. And technological inequities exacerbate the challenges in addressing the racial, ethnic, and economic disparities in our region. Unless addressed, they will challenge our carbon reduction plans and further deepen the technology divide between the haves and have-nots. Across the country, there's a big gap in digital or broadband access in disadvantaged communities. A recent study showed that only 57% of Spanish-speaking Latinx residents in California are connected to the internet by home computers. In the Sacramento region this past spring, Wi-Fi hotspot buses were sent to underserved communities to help children and parents who lacked internet access. While this is certainly creative, this temporary fix isn't a permanent solution to the digital divide. In a COVID world where reliance on the digital environment is accelerated, a lack of adequate access to the internet and broadband means that children in these communities will fall behind in K-12 education. Their parents will not be able to compete for remote work job opportunities, and families will have substantially less access to social services and healthcare. Global warming emissions and climate change hit low-income communities and people of color particularly hard. In the Sacramento region, that's due to these neighborhoods being disproportionately located near busy roads and freeways, leading to higher rates of asthma and other illnesses. Within our region, we have around 18,000 electric vehicles, with very few of these vehicles actually finding their way onto the streets of our disadvantaged communities. The dramatic increase in electric vehicle adoption is critical if we are to meet our climate and air quality goals. But thus far, those communities who would benefit the most from EVs are left out of the equation. I'm pleased to report, however, that regulatory changes in California's cap and trade program have resulted in rebate amounts awarded to low-income EV drivers being about twice the state average as compared to other EV drivers. It's an encouraging statistic, but let's face it, the cost of EVs remain an imposing barrier for residents in these communities. Similarly, while California leads the country in solar power and other forms of clean energy, disadvantaged communities aren't seeing the benefits. And what's worse, they are often bearing some of the burden of cost shifts between solar and non-solar customers. SMUD serves an estimated 120,000 low-income households. Of those households, only 1,200 have rooftop solar. And SMUD has been responsible for more than 200 of those installations through a creative program with the nonprofits Grid Alternatives and Habitat for Humanity. By comparison, we have more than 30,000 customers who are middle income or higher. Those are solar customers. Every month, we have around 400 new rooftop solar customers, yet most months, I can count the number of those in our disadvantaged communities on one hand. Disappointing and frustrating statistics, to say the least. So if you're sitting there listening and thinking, this sounds personal to this guy, then you'd be right. I'm a boy from the wrong side of the tracks, the son of a 19-year-old single mom. For a time when I was young, we lived in a one-bedroom apartment. I shared the single bedroom with my sister. My mom slept on the couch. Despite my mom sometimes working 2 jobs, on occasion we would run out of money. And if we hadn't been able to eat at my grandparents' house, we'd have gone hungry. So yeah, it's personal. And why I'm so grateful that that isn't my life today. I've never forgotten the anxiety of those early days. Marks me the same way as the tattoo on my arm does. As a community-owned, not-for-profit electric utility, SMUD believes in the power of community. We deliver reliable, affordable, and environmentally progressive electricity. For many years, SMUD has invested in supporting the causes that advance our mission and are important to our customers. And yet, the Brookings report confirmed where we had fallen short. We had been on a journey to be more than an electric utility. We talked about being a company that brought unique value to our community and the one that made a real difference in the lives of real people. I believe passionately in community, but with the Brookings report, equity and disparity were brought into sharp relief. It forced us to take a hard look at our activities and face the reality that the value of many of our programs, from energy efficiency to electric vehicles to even tree planting, had not flowed fairly or easily to those communities most in need. We didn't shy away from that reality and decided to put equity into action. Nothing escaped scrutiny. Even our most popular and feel-good partnership with the Sacramento Tree Foundation, where we had partnered to plant more than 600,000 shade trees since 1990, was scrutinized. Today at SMUD, Community encompasses social equity, environmental stewardship, support for local nonprofits in STEM education and workforce development, inclusive economic development, and building sustainable neighborhoods. Environmental equity and social justice are front and center in our strategy, decisions, and investments. Here are a few things we've done. We reformed our low-income rates with a 4-tiered discount based on the federal poverty level to provide more assistance to our customers based on electric bill burden. In other words, our poorest customers receive the greatest bill discount. We realigned all of our programs and services to ensure we were investing in and providing help and real value to our disadvantaged customers and communities. For example, between 2017 and 2019, we reached 19,000 low-income customers with energy efficiency bundles, weatherization, HVAC repairs or replacement, new refrigerators, deep retrofits, and electrification, saving these customers more than $1.1 million on their electric bills. And despite COVID restrictions, we've been able to reach almost 3,000 low-income customers this year. We created the Shine Community Benefit Grant Program, which since 2016 has provided $2 million in grants to local nonprofits and community organizations, largely working in disadvantaged neighborhoods. These grant dollars have been augmented by more than $3 million from other SMUD programs. We initiated a scholarship and internship program focused on students most in need of financial assistance. A majority of our college and high school interns are now from historically underserved communities. We expanded our employee giving and employee volunteer program, and I'm so proud that our employee giving program provides more than $500,000 a year to local nonprofits, and our employees volunteer more than 16,000 hours a year to help local nonprofits achieve their critical missions. Oh, and that shade tree partnership I spoke about earlier, less than 10% of the 600,000 shade trees we planted ended up in disadvantaged communities. We have retooled the SAC Shade program to focus on trees for all and substantial tree planting in tree-barren neighborhoods. But nowhere is our commitment to be part of the solution when it comes to equity and social justice more evident than our Sustainable Communities Initiative rolled out in 2018. The Sustainable Communities Initiative is founded on the principle that while we will take a prominent leadership role in addressing equity, we can't do it alone. And it's going to take strategic partnerships to leverage a shared commitment to positive change. We're partnering with healthcare, transit, policymakers, educational institutions, business, nonprofits, and others to maximize collective impact to improve environmental, healthcare, transportation, education, workforce, and economic opportunity outcomes in our historically underserved neighborhoods. We are identifying opportunities to collaborate, create shared metrics, and leverage investments to improve multiple outcomes in these communities. We're taking a very data-driven approach to sustainable communities to ensure our collective investments are driving the right outcomes. Earlier this year, we developed and introduced an important tool to identify investment opportunities and measure progress over time. SMUD's technical team developed a Sustainable Communities Resource Priorities Map, which lives on our website but is freely accessible by the public and our partners. The interactive map uses and analyzes publicly available data to indicate areas most likely to be underserved in a host of areas. The map's data layers, which can be viewed separately or in various combinations, include things such as community development, income, housing, employment opportunities, transportation, medical treatment, nutrition, education, clean environment, vulnerability to climate change, tree canopy, food deserts, free and reduced price school meal data, and even things like EV penetration and EV charging locations. A lot, in other words, and a really robust set of data that can be used by our partners. The open source map is becoming a vital community asset in helping SMUD and other organizations collaborate and target investments. For example, our largest school district has begun to use the map as it plans how best to allocate limited resources into disadvantaged neighborhoods. The sustainable communities approach we've embraced will play an important role in execution of SMUD's current $7 billion integrated resource plan, which commits us to achieving a net zero carbon goal by 2040. Our board has recently upped the ante by setting a moonshot goal of carbon neutrality by 2030 as part of its climate emergency declaration. In addition to substantial investments in new renewables and storage, the electrification of the building and transportation sectors is central to our resource plan success. Our carbon goals are ambitious, and we recognize the existential threat of climate change and the demand for drastic action. But these ambitious goals raise important equity issues, which we will have to both grapple with and solve if we are to be successful. Questions like, how do we ensure low-income customers can transition from gas to all-electric households at a similar pace to our better-off customers? How do we transition these customers to a low-carbon future when they struggle to pay rent or a mortgage or even address the basics like food on the table for their families? How do we transition to a low-carbon future in a holistic way that supports the integrity of these families and creates access to well-paying jobs in the clean economy? How do we achieve our carbon goals and still ensure that electric bills are affordable for those customers who struggle day in and day out? This is just an example of the hard questions we'll have to answer if we're going to be successful in an equitable and inclusive fashion, and there are many more. I have a good friend whose entire career has been working in disadvantaged communities. We're talking about SMUD's carbon goals and how to achieve them and the cost. And she told me, I understand the need to address climate change. I support aggressively reducing carbon, but you need to understand that if you leave our forgotten communities behind, or if you drive up costs so people can't afford to pay their utility bills or their rent or put food on the table, or they don't have a decent paying job, then you haven't achieved crap. That's almost a direct quote, folks, but I had to change the last word for purposes of a public presentation, but you get the drift, I think. But her comments took me back to the anxiety of my childhood and the fear I sometimes saw in my mom's eyes as she juggled bills. There are no easy answers. There is no simple path. It will be hard to chart a course that embraces new technologies, reduces carbon, and significantly improves equity. We must do more than talk about equity. We must jointly commit to take action and then do the hard work. If there are any silver linings to the playbook we've been handed in 2020, one of them is that more people here and around the world are seeing injustice and inequality in a new light. It's not as easy to say that's not my problem as it was before. I know all of us in the virtual room want to do the right thing, and the right thing often isn't the easy thing. But if we don't address technological equity and carbon reduction equity in a meaningful way, then those most at risk will lose. And to quote my friend, we won't have achieved crap. But I have faith in all of us that collaboration and shared commitment, that through this, we can travel the hard path to a more equitable and low carbon future. If I've made some of you a little uncomfortable today, then good. We should all be a little uncomfortable over this issue. I'll close with two quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. The first frames the problem. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And the second quote should be our North Star and couldn't be more relevant than today. Dr. King said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? So thanks for listening to me. I hope you have a great conference, and thanks.
Arlen, thank you so much for those absolutely moving comments. Your career, in your career, you have achieved way more than a lot of crap. You've done a lot of amazing things in the 30 years since you have joined SMUD, and you have given us a clarion call to how we move forward over the next 1 year, 3 years, 30 years. As you reflect back on your 30 years at SMUD and you project out into the next generation, what has changed the most in the utility industry, and will that allow us to achieve those goals, not just in SMUD's service territory, but nationwide and globally?
I think what's changed, what's fundamental, is just the wealth of data that we have. So, we knew very little about our customers in the past. We know almost everything about our customers today. I mean, we have smart meter data, we buy demographic data and psycho data. That's probably not quite the right word, but you know what I mean. And so we have all this information today, so we can't hide from our problems anymore. But it also creates these incredible opportunities for us to get it right, and making sure that we get it right for all of our customers. So I think while we've got big challenges ahead of us, I think there are huge opportunities to address not only carbon, but equity in a meaningful and inclusive way. So I think that just the sheer volume of data is something that is just so dramatically different. And we have to seize the power of that data and use it in a meaningful way.
Well, Arlen, everyone at Z Prime is so honored that you have been a consistent, fantastic speaker at Energy Thought Summits. You have always asked us to think more broadly, to push the needle, to think about others in the work that we do. I am so grateful that I get to have this moment here to thank you personally, even though we are a couple thousand miles apart. It's a shame not to be in the room with you. But congratulations on just your fantastic career at SMUD, and thank you for this comment, because this will echo on for many years to come as that call to do great things and to think of others and to lift people up with our work in the energy industry. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a great conference. It's been a pleasure as always, and I wish I was there, but maybe a future ETS I'll show up too.
Well, that's right. You can still come back, and we still want you to come back to make sure that we're all doing the good work that you've laid out.